On? Microphone. So, distinguished audience, distinguished members of this panel, it is my pleasure and honor to welcome you at the Black Sea and the Balkan Security Forum 2025 at the panel 16B, to be very precise, dealing with weaponization of migration, a new phase of Russia hybrid war. This panel is honored by the presence of Mr. Oleksiy GONCHARENKO, Mr. Raimar Wagner on my next left, then is Monsieur Emmanuel DUPUY de France, and last but not least from Poland, Aleksander OLECH. As you already are aware, our panel will deal and dive into the complex problematic of the war in Ukraine, primarily giving strong attention to the people dimension. It was very much said during this conference about the weapons, the military aspect, the infrastructure aspect, reconstruction, economic aspect. But now we want to focus and look more carefully to the people. In its brutal and illegal invasion of Ukraine, Russia used all the hybrid war tools. The goal of undermining Ukraine's security and stability. For this, Russia has used all the tactics like disinformation, cyber attacks, economic coercion, and support of non-statal actors. Moreover, in a cynical, and I would even call criminal gesture, Russia targeted the innocent civil population. Besides the horrible crimes, these tactics induced fear and determined a large-scale migration flow that took refuge from the war, with a scope, Russian scope, to exert a supplementary pressure to destabilize Ukraine. In a deliberate way of using the tactic of weaponization of migration, in its hybrid war, the military objectives of Russia have not yet been achieved, and hopefully they will never be achieved. But still, we are witnessing, sadly, a large number of population which is displaced from its original place. After 3 years of massive displacement and extensive destruction, a profound human suffering has come to reality, and we are witnessing now separation of families, abandonment of homes, and loss of properties. In a total, during the 3 years, a population of around 14 million people, which represents around 35% of Ukraine's population, has been forced to flee from their homes, seeking refuge both in Ukraine and in the neighboring countries. At present, the data we have available in February 2025 shows that at this very moment, 3.7 million Ukrainians are internally displaced within the country, and around 6.9 million have sought refugees abroad, according to the figures provided by the UN Refugee Agency and the International Organization for Migration. Just to have an idea of the impact, the social impact of these figures, I want to underline that 76% of these people are of women and children. The displacement crisis has resulted in a significant humanitarian need. An estimated number of 12.7 million people are in need of assistance in 2025, this including almost 2 million children. The widespread destruction and loss of lives have resulted in the largest humanitarian emergency after the Second World War. More than 2.5 million houses were destroyed, and that represents 13% of the housing stock. Alongside with the humanitarian dimension, it came out the economic and social facets of temporary integration needs and the prospects of returning back home. The need to address humanitarian needs received a very positive response from the neighboring countries: Poland, Romania, Czechia, Slovakia, Bulgaria, Republic of Moldova, and Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. For example, Poland welcomed the greatest number of Ukrainian refugees and currently hosts approximately 1 million refugees. To compare with the Romanian numbers, Romania registered a peak of around 125,000 Ukrainian refugees. Now this number has lowered to around 80,000. The panel which we are now opening will offer the perspective from Germany, from France, from Poland, but primarily from Ukraine, the way in Ukraine this weaponization of migration is perceived. And therefore it is my great privilege to introduce the first speaker, which will be with us just online due to reasons to be understood. And I want to give the floor to Mr. Oleksiy GONCHARENKO, the President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, the Committee on Migration, Refugees, and Internally Displaced Persons, member of the Verkhovna Rada in Ukraine. Oleksiy, if you have all the technical staff with you, please address our audience.
Hello, and I'm happy to join you. Yes, I'm sorry that I'm not in person. Today we have a meeting of the Standing Committee of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe happening. So that's why I'm on my duties as the President of Committee on Migration. I'm a member of the Standing Committee. So I am here, but it's an honor for me to join you. Very important topic, both for me as a Ukrainian MP and also as the President of Committee on Migration and Refugees of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. Russia is using in its hybrid war against not just Ukraine, but against the West, against civilized world, against Europe, all possible tools, absolutely all. And unfortunately, while for Europe, people are human beings, for Russia, it's just instruments. And they're using people to attack Europe. We saw it during the civil war in Syria, where Russia actively made everything possible to increase number of refugees, people running from, for example, Aleppo, which was heavily involved in other cities of Syria, where Russian Air Force was used to bomb the cities and to destroy the houses, hospitals, to make a new wave of migrants. And then these migrants were used by Russian propaganda, trying to show and to threaten European citizens. Now Russia is using migrants from Belarus, which they sent to Lithuania. And Belarus is in fact occupied by Russia, and Lukashenko is a puppet regime. So now they send people from Belarus migrants from Belarus, which they attract from Middle East countries, other countries. Yeah, they also earn big money on this by these human being trafficking, and also attacking borders of Lithuania and Poland from Belarus. Both these countries, Poland and Lithuania, are under serious attack. Just today, there was a news that Lithuanian government came to the International Court of Justice against Belarus for using migration as an instrument to attack these countries. Also, Russia is doing it by its own hands from its own territory against Finland on the Finnish border. So this is already quite a pattern used by Russia, where they used, when they attack Ukraine, they use drones and missiles. But when they attack European countries today, other European countries, they also use migration and people. Their tactics is very elaborated. They don't just attack their countries, they also cause big internal political debates. Because unfortunately, Europe is not prepared. Unfortunately, still topic of migration is very hot topic in European countries. And Europe, you know, changes its way very seriously, from attracting everybody then to creating ghettos in which migrants continue to live, and we see crime rise and things like this, which threaten people in these countries, which makes them to be afraid of migration. All of this is used by Russia. Recently, they are also using, as Ukrainian MP, and you said about Ukrainian angle, and we see that recently Russia started to use Ukrainian refugees, trying to hire them in some way, trying to find those who are in very difficult social conditions in the countries where they are now, to hire them for some attacks against European security, and by this to oppose them to the societies in which they live in. So it's super cynical approach. First, they destroyed their houses, and now they're using these people to attack the countries where they found refuge in order to create tensions between these countries and Ukraine. Inside these countries, political debate, rise, and so on. So this is a very difficult situation, and the only way we can oppose it is to be aware of what Russia is doing and to have a clear migration and refugee policy, which should be based on absolutely understandable norms, which should protect human beings, but at the same time protect the societies where these human beings are arriving. Thank you very much, and if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer.
We thank you very much for this insight, Oleksiy. And probably the first question that comes to my mind, we know that you are not going to be able to stay with us for the whole session. How do you see the situation in the coming future? What do you expect from the neighboring countries, from the European Union member states to do in this situation? And what do you think will happen the day after a peace settlement will be achieved?
First of all, the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe last year adopted resolution about refugee crisis because of Russian aggression against Ukraine. And first, what I would like to do is to encourage you to adopt the norms of this resolution, because it answers on many questions about social things, about securing the connection between Ukrainian refugees with Ukraine, about possibility for Ukrainian refugees to come back, and so on. So this is really important resolution, and I encourage you to use it in your countries, and it was adopted unanimously in the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, so you can clearly use it as a kind of a guideline. Secondly, which is important, definitely we need to do everything we can in order to help as many Ukrainians as possible to come back home after the end of the war. What will help us in this? Definitely two things. First is help to Ukraine to make a recovery in the country. That will need that will create millions of jobs, that will create a huge market for European companies, that will make a big need in their labor, and that will show to Ukrainians that their country has future as a member of European Union, I hope. So we need to accept Ukraine to European Union as soon as possible, and then we need to seize frozen Russian assets, because it is not French, British, Polish, or Romanian taxpayers who should pay for rebuilding of Ukraine, but it should be Russia who should pay for what they did. And these assets are available, they are frozen today, but I think they should be seized as soon as possible. And that is something which can be done now. Secondly, we need to create programs today. So that's what I said, which will be done after the end of hostilities. But also there are things which can be made today. First of all, is to help the Ukrainian refugees to keep touch with Ukraine. To, like now, after our resolution was adopted, positive cases in Germany, for example, where Ukrainian language is introduced in the schools, the second foreign language, which helps Ukrainian children to continue to learn their native language, and by this to help securing this connection and link. Also, we propose to make a program of financial support to those refugees who are ready to come back. For example, in Norway, they calculated that it's cheaper for Norway to help such people to come back to Ukraine than to pay their accommodation and help them in Norway. So it also can be economically beneficial. So there are many things which can be done, and I encourage you to use our resolution, which was adopted in the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe last June.
Thank you very much for your answer, and I think this is a good encouragement and a good line to follow. Definitely, we have acknowledged the terms of the resolution, and it is in the responsibility of each member state to implement the recommendation of the resolution. Thank you so much, Oleksiy, for being with us today. If you will not be able to...
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. We will follow with you on our conclusions of this panel. And with no further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Raimar Wagner, the director of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom from Germany, the director for Romania and the Republic of Moldova, to give the German perspective over this weaponization of migration issue.
Following maybe the line of Mr. Goncharenko, yes, Germany was maybe the first victim of weaponization of migration. If we look back to 2015 with the Syrian crisis. But because we have just limited time, I will just emphasize a little bit on hybrid warfare, because weaponization of migration is one of the complex things of hybrid warfare. And I will give you just an example. So for Germany, it was clear that it's a human right matter to take the Syrian refugees, but Russia weaponized it. We had this Lisa case. I don't know if you remember it. So Lisa, a 13-year-old girl, was raped with Russian and German background, was raped by Arabian migrants. Sounds plausible. It was just an invented story by Russian propaganda tools, spread in the German public opinion, outraged Germany, generated even street protest. That's how weaponization of migration works. So what we see for Russia is it's not just important to stress the borders. In Lithuania, now with Belarus, opened this visa regime, or to stress the Lithuanian or the Nordic borders. We've seen in 2023 also here a crisis that we had migrants from Africa on the Nordic borders. They just not want to stress the borders, they want to stress the population. The main outcome for that is poisoning the domestic minds. So when we talk about weaponization of migration, we need to talk about heavy disinformation. So disinformation is working around migration and creating, of course, a bad mood. If we see now the results in the Nordic countries, in Germany, and in other Western countries, in all the electoral debates, migration was a big issue. Migration was the main topic of far right, of fascist, of extremist party, bringing them to the parliament, and we in Germany see how successful AfD is with it. But AfD and all the other far right or even extremist leftist parties have the support of Russia. And it's not just influencing Russian influence on it, it's that Russia is present in each country. Russia has created an ecosystem of disinformation with presence in Turkey, in Germany, in all these countries. And we have witnessed it even at the Romanian elections, how it works. So they use all this ecosystem of disinformation, of fake social media accounts, of all what is working around that. They use it to create this bad mood, to have dissensus and not European unity, and migration is creating not European unity. For Germany, it's now very, very, very important to push on European level the new pact of asylum and migration. Germany is the driving force on this, and just yesterday, I believe Meloni and the Danish Prime Minister just said, okay, but we need to make it more heavier. We need that migrants who had committed some penal cases need to be pushed away. And it's always a case that in case of if we create in this way ghettos, or we just be really harsh state, and on human rights. And just one, because the leftist, you know, the far rights will say out with migrants, and then the leftist and the left extreme will say we need to defend the human rights, and we do something bad there. And then we have in each country a huge debate on it, and we have a huge societal dissensus. That's how it works. We recognize this. We have our lessons on this, and that's why Germany is pushing now that we have a consensus on European level. Of course, even NATO 2 or 3 years ago recognized and see migration as a disinformation and a hybrid warfare tool.
Thank you very much, Raimar. I think your point was very clear. Migration was an issue in Europe. It is not only derived from the war in Ukraine. It produced already some emotions and tensions in the societies of the member states for some time. In a cynical manner, indeed, Russia used this tensed situation in European Union by adding gas on the fire with the instruments of manipulation after the war started in Ukraine. Germany, of course, has a strong experience starting from the Syrian refugees crisis. And I'm happy to hear that Germany is now in the front lead of a new migration policy in Europe. It's not only Germany, it's also France having a long-lasting experience with integration of migrants. Therefore, I think the French perspective will complete the one offered by Reimar from Germany. And it is my pleasure to invite to take the floor Professor Emmanuel DUPUY, which is the president of the Institute for European Perspective and Security in France. Currently, he is the president for the Perspective and Security Institute in Europe. He is a journalist, a consultant, a professor in geopolitical lessons and teachings, and one of his key interests is geopolitics in the Mediterranean region.
Thank you, Cristian. This is precisely where I'm heading, because we have had an experience about direct implication of migrants border to border in the east of Europe. I will try to focus much more, on the concrete impact that hybrid war is fueling in Africa, because we have to take in consideration that we are already in a hybrid war with Russia, but in this hybrid war there is direct warfare and indirect warfare. That is my first assumption. I will elaborate more on that. Second of all, I think we have to make a difference when we speak about migration, about refugees, internal displaced people, asylum seekers, because there are some different rights linked to that, and Russia is trying to reinforce the opposition to Article 51 of the 1951 Geneva Convention, which gives rights to these migrants. Because, of course, there are some reasons why people are flying their homes, crossing an international border or not crossing an international border. This is the difference between refugee and IDPs, internal displaced people, or stateless people. That is, I think, something important, not to say that there are only migrants, that there's a difference of status, and that Russia is using this in order to fuel a certain number of weak spots. And of course, in Europe, one of the weakest spots, and I will start by that, is saying that the migration crisis is fueling the rise of extremist party, because it gives an impetus, it gives an incentive, extreme right, extreme left. This can maybe explain the 22% of Chega party in Portugal. This may also explain the results of the 1st of June election, second round of the presidential election in Poland, where now a certain number of interrogation is fueling the narrative of the peace candidate Karol Nawrocki. I just read a poll saying that, as we are speaking of today, 38% of the Polish are reluctant to the acceptance of the Ukrainian refugees or the Ukrainian people crossing the border, which was, of course, different from 3 years ago. Having said that, let me focus a bit more on the direct and indirect dimension of the weaponization, not of migrants, but the weaponization of humans, or the trafficking of humans, which, of course, is one of the tools of this hybrid warfare that Russia is using. Africa gives us a very pragmatical example when it comes to the opposition to a certain number of countries. Let me take the example of France. First of all, the first dimension, the first direct material dimension of the weaponization of migrants can be seen in the Sahel region, where after the withdrawal, the forced withdrawal of France from Mali, from Burkina Faso and Niger, there has been a sort of very stubborn, very active, very efficient disinformation and misinformation strategy. It even took it was experienced throughout cartoons, saying that France is responsible for the instability of the region, and France could be accountable for a certain number of massacres, false flag operation. One, for example, in the camp of Gossi in the center of Mali, which of course was blocked by the French reinterpretation of the counter-narrative of Russia. Russia uses that, saying that is one of the reasons why France did not fulfill its commitment, and one of the reasons why the political instability of this region is originated. That is a direct dimension. The second dimension, which is maybe not so obvious, is the indirect use of migration, but not recent migration, old migration, throughout a very stubborn and very precise narrative concerning diasporas inside our society. Again, on the same basis that France and other countries, moreover those implicated and considered as co-belligerent in Ukraine, must be accounted for and must be opposed on their post-colonial stance. We do have in mind that there are two resolutions that I do not put aside: the 1946 resolution and the 1960 resolution, speaking about territories, quote, non-autonomous territory, but this has been used by a certain number of countries, Russia, and I will add one, Azerbaijan, showing throughout an initiative, the Baku initiative, that France must not be considered as a reliable diplomatic partner, because it was considered to be more sustaining Armenia, and was attacked on the basis that it was a colonial country, and therefore using the non-integration and the non-sufficient integration inside a society. This was fueled by social media. This was fueled, of course, throughout Pan-African voices throughout the continent. So these two dimensions must not forget also another dimension, and I would finish by that very rapidly. Let's say, not forgetting that we must also take in consideration that maybe we should remember that Russia is using the same thing, which is with its own neighborhood. And a few days ago, there was a sort of reboot about this interrogation concerning the forced naturalization of migrants from Kyrgyzstan, from Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, forced to go to fight in Ukraine. And of course, this is important because now the former Soviet citizens who are now in Russia are forced to fight, otherwise they will be taking out their nationality. So I think I will resume my thoughts in saying hybrid warfare, yes, direct operation, indirect targets on the, let's say, the hearts and the mind of the migrants living inside our society, and the third pillar, saying that Russia is doing the same thing. It is criticizing what we have been doing, but doing the same thing, which is with its own, quote, ex-colonial power.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. I think it was very good to this broader picture you brought in. It is zooming out a little bit out of our perspective, bilateral perspective, to a larger one which France has experienced over the decades. And I think it is very interesting also to see the correlation between the weaponization of migration and the implications in the political landscape and the turbulences which are deriving out of this, together and accelerated and amplified by the use of social media tools. But we will come to this general discussion after the last intervention, which is coming from Poland. Emmanuel already pointed out there is a dynamic of acceptance and the Polish society towards the Ukrainian migrants, and definitely Aleksander will know how to elaborate more on this. Aleksander OLECH is the head of international cooperation at Defense 24 and a lecturer at both national and international universities. He is a NATO associate as well as an experienced analyst and publicist specialized in international security. I also mentioned Poland is now welcoming the largest number of Ukrainian refugees, around 1 million, and I think the input of Aleksander will be very important for our discussion today.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here. I'm the last with regards to giving statement, and I'm also happy because you gave me all cards to my hand, and now I can talk about what you have said. So first of all, it's not everything that clear as we can speak about the Russian Federation, because you mentioned past, so I would like to also mention past. You mentioned crisis 2015. Also, I would like to mention that the whole war started 2014, and for the next 10 years we've been carrying out the cooperation with the Russian Federation. With regards to migration, my PhD was on terrorism. So with regards to France and Germany, it's not because now Russia is using migration as a weapon and is using disinformation as a weapon, because Poland has been for the past 60 years very homogeneous society. But now with migration, And what is happening now, we are giving them with particular cases the element as a weapon to talk about it. So in Germany and in France, and you have to both admit it, there are many cases where migrants are involved at some badly cases. And it's not because I am anti-migrant, because I used to be a migrant all over the world. But the thing is that if you have at least one case where migrant is carrying out a terrorist activity, then the Russian Federation will use it. So this is the biggest challenge. And there are some cases in France, in Germany, also in Sweden. In the past, I haven't heard about migrants that are carrying out terrorist activity in Poland. But now I've been hearing a lot about their criminal activity, about what Ukrainians, Georgians, Belarusians, but also people from Somalia and Senegal are doing in Poland. So starting after the 24th of February, we acquired a lot of Ukrainians. We are very keen to have a lot of them, because I have to remind you of that migrants are also crucial for developing economy. But at the same time, to acquire as many migrants as we did, you need tools, you need a strategy, you need a lot of elements that are crucial for society to gather and acquire all those people. And unfortunately, neither France, nor Germany, nor Poland had those tools to acquire that high number of foreign citizens. And this is what we are seeing now in Poland, that on the one hand we have Ukrainians that are crucial to us, but on the other hand, you mentioned elections in Poland. This is the challenge we are facing. We haven't been that prepared to face a challenge that we will be having that many migrants from all over the world. And now, as societies are showing us, in France, Rassemblement National, avec Marine Le Pen, they are having very good score. They obtain the biggest number of votes, even though they don't have the biggest number of seats in the parliament, they obtain the biggest number of votes in the French Republic. AfD in Germany, also getting stronger. And finally, in Poland, two parties, or let's say, right-wing parties and the right-wing supporters are voting for them because they are seeing that migration is a challenge for us. And those situations, those challenges are going to be all over the Europe. Why? Because Sahel region you mentioned is the youngest region in the world. The average age in the continent of Africa is 26.9. In the Sahel region is 25.6. And the Sahel region is extremely poor region. All those countries, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Chad, they all had coups. They all have military regimes. And the young people that are living there, they are looking for help, looking for work, looking for their futures. So they will look for some chances going through Mediterranean Sea. And there, the Russian Federation is here. The Wagner Group, Afrika Corps, all those people, all those mercenaries are there. And they're using, for instance, the airport in Minsk, airport in Moscow, to bring those guys from Africa. And either young women are working in factories in Russia to build drones, and those drones are being used to attack cities in Ukraine, or those young men are going through Belarus to eastern land borders of Poland and Lithuania. So this is the challenge, as I see, that the Russian Federation has been very, very effectively seeing this situation with regards to migration, and now using disinformation, fake news to pump it up, but at the same time is truly pushing migrants through our eastern borders. And this challenge will be again repeated, and without tools to inform the society, the support for particular parties will simply grow. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we can jump at an open discussion. I think everybody has some comments to do after listening to each intervention. I think this is a common line. Each of the distinguished panelists have underlined the fact that this is a multifaceted issue. It is not only related to the war in Ukraine, it is also derived from the deep down problematic in European societies. The migration flows have come from different areas of the globe, and now we are dealing with it with a high amplification, a cynical and negative one coming from the Russian influence. Therefore, this correlation between these aspects which are to be continued for many decades on, not only related, as I said, to Ukraine. What are the adequate political solutions? What is the answer we need to do at the national level and also at the European level, if any, to combat manipulation, disinformation, and to set the ground for a stable society where migration, which is a fact of life, a societal issue, is positive and not negatively reflected and not inducing turbulences in the political landscape with the consequences we witness in Germany, France, Romania, and Poland.
Or stress between countries. When Germany wanted to send some Afghans through Poland, it was stress, diplomatic stress between both of the countries, heavily. So that is Russia doing, and I strongly believe that, and I'm in line with you, that each country alone is not able to address all these issues. Germany created a body, created a expert council for immigration and integration. They just launched recommendation for the next government how to tackle this issue. These are all decent measures. Maybe I'm criticizing on personal level. I'm saying what they didn't put in that paper was to explicit address Russia. They mentioned Belarus, but they didn't explicit. The other measures are decent. I will just quote President von der Leyen, having also the German experience from the European Commission in December. We have taken another decisive step to support our frontline member states in countering hybrid threats from Russia's and Belarus' unacceptable weaponization of migration. Especially countries bordering Russia and Belarus, such as Finland, with its 1,340-kilometer-long border with Russia, are facing the heavy challenge to guarantee the security of the Union and territorial integrity of member states. Today, we offer these countries further support, including an additional 117 million in funding to upgrade electronic surveillance equipment, improve telecommunication networks, deploy mobile detection equipment, and counter drone intrusion. Autocrats must never be allowed to use our European values against us. That was a strong statement of the head of the European Commission. Poland benefits 50 million of that, Finland also, and other states. I mentioned in my input the European Act for Asylum and Migration. How you stressed for asylum and migration, we need to keep all these human rights, the line on human rights, and grant all these refugees the rights.
Yes, if I may. Well, first of all, I would really strongly advocate to not make a link between migration and terrorism. That's my first assumption, as a person speaking on my personal behalf, because what we're seeing in France, at least, and I think in Western Europe, is home-made terrorism and not terrorism coming from migration. That does not it says exactly the same thing. The question of polarization, the question of asymmetry, of integration of people coming from outside the society in which they live. But I would not say that there is a direct link as such, as some extreme leftist or extreme rightist parties advocating for or against. That's my first assumption. My second assumption would be saying that, well, of course, we have a certain number of tools on the table, the Article 51 of the 1951 Convention, but that's a bit, let's say, outdated, but we must absolutely rethink or reboot the integration of the migrants or the asylum seekers or the refugee throughout a clear rewriting of the Dublin III partnership of Dublin III document, which is absolutely not capable of coping with the mass of migrants that we have, and that's my second point. My third point would be saying that I think what is important to have in mind is that each state is facing its own problem of migration and its own problem, whether it's far or short or far from the subject. Let's take the front-line countries, the Latin front-line countries, Spain, France, and Italy. I would put Germany apart. I think it's important to have a European Union policy and to take in consideration that each of these countries have the right to have their own policy. Giorgia Meloni has the right to think that maybe to have a special link with Albania, with Tunisia and Libya will ease the numbers of migrants coming throughout Lampedusa, Sicilia, and the south of Italy. I think it's the same thing with Spain, having a discussion concerning circular mobility with Morocco. As you know, a huge part of the migrants go throughout Spanish territories inside the Moroccan territories, the Preside, Ceuta and Melilla, for example. And of course, Germany has a different approach. I think it's a very interesting approach, and maybe France can learn from that. Instead of taking in consideration the migrants when they go to the final destination, because we must have in mind what was the hybrid reason why in Belarus a certain number of migrants came from Lithuania to Poland to go to Germany. So Germany was the target for this.
Merkel called Lukashenko on
absolutely. Of course, I'm not manuring, of course, the impact concerning the Polish border and the Lithuanian border, but there was a target. There was, of course, a reason for that. And let me stress that maybe we should not only focus on the weaponization of migration, weaponization of the human trafficking from Russia, because it is a mindset that some other countries are using. So we need to have a European policy to take in consideration that Turkey is using the same weaponization of migrants. It used it throughout the Bulgarian, throughout the Greece border, the Evros River, crossing the Evros River. And of course, as I said, Morocco has used this in order to force its agenda concerning Spain and Ceuta Melilla. We can go back in history. Colonel Gaddafi used that in order to have money when he was in power, still alive, and forcing us to take that in consideration. And as I'm speaking, 2.5 migrants or 2.5 potential people are in Libya, maybe waiting for this weaponization to come. And so therefore my really last point would say that maybe we have to take in consideration that we must work on this issue very in a long-term perspective. Compact for Africa, which was proposed by Angela Merkel when she was a chancellor in 2017, invests in countries because we have to take in consideration that 80% of the migrants do not cross the Mediterranean border. They cross borders inside Africa. Therefore, put money where countries can be a source of non-governing countries or problem of security and so forth and so on. Giorgia Meloni proposed the same thing with the Matteo Plan when she came in power in 2022. Maybe we can learn from that and have a special integrated European vision and, of course, take in consideration the best practices from some European countries.
Okay, thank you. Dear Emmanuel, excuse me, but my research doesn't allow me to agree with regards to migration and terrorism. It's about second, third, or fourth generation. It's about the country. If people from foreign country coming to one country, we have to provide them with support. If not, they can carry out a criminal terrorist activity. And example of Vienna, Austria, example of France, those are there, but we can follow up this discussion later. With regards to our activity, first of all, from the perspective of all EU countries, because always Poland will be saying that our situation is the worst, let's the European Union focus here. But also I do agree with you, there is Italy, Spain, Portugal and France, and the southern flank of the EU and NATO is even more crucial. From my perspective, if Poland, France and Germany cooperate together, because Germany has one of the biggest number of embassies and chamber of commerce all over Africa, then France has the biggest number of embassies all over Africa. And Poland is known a colonial power. We were colonized by the Russian Federation. So if we talk together to those people there, not to come here on the Russian basis, but come here on our basis, because we will look for foreign support, we will look for foreign work force. But if we use our methods to help those people to come, to verify who they are, what they need, what are their skills, then they can be in the European Union. On the other way around, they will be coming here, some countries will be pushing them, some countries will allow them to go to Germany, then Poland and Germany will be having issue because someone is pushing from this side, someone is pushing from another side. So, from my perspective, Russia Federation is doing disinformation and weaponization migration, so our counter-answer is public diplomacy. This is what works. And secondly, yesterday the European Union had Africa summit. It was between the European Union and Africa. It wasn't that promoted. If you look, the Russia Federation organized a huge summit, 2023, and they are pushing hard to have huge summits, Africa, Russia. And we have to convince our counterparts in Africa, in the Middle East, that we are better and more valuable partner, and the promises of the Russia Federation are nothing that we can really provide with the support from the European Union. And the Ukrainians prove that they can be very good migrants in the European Union, and the Union they really would like to join.
Well, unfortunately, our time has gone. It was really flying fast. I want to thank the distinguished panelists. I want to thank you all for attending this panel. I will just zoom in with a very short conclusion. We witnessed the multifaceted aspects of weaponization of migration. Still, we need to consider the point which is now hurting and burning, and this is the around 7 million population of Ukrainians, which are spread all over countries around the Ukraine, and giving the short flow of population and the compact of this situation and the duration of it, we need to engage more and give more consideration to the schemes, bilateral and European level, to make possible these people to return home. Because it's not only about the reconstruction, the physical infrastructure reconstruction, it's also to give consideration and respect to the human capital. And I think this is the vital core of the issue. Therefore, I hope to have more about this in the coming sessions. Maybe we can give one conference for returning back those people which in 3 years had to leave their homes, and they are looking to come back according to the polls which are now done in Ukraine. So thank you very much. I hope we were not taking too much after the time limit. I wish you a good conference still on. Thank you.